We are going to give a couple more minutes, everyone, to have everybody to come into the waiting room and here and there. So just give us a couple more minutes.
Supply chain. Some would award this poet meme status.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I would like to say Happy National Deaf History Month. It's my honor to be here tonight to introduce to Ann Thomas. And before I introduce to Ann Thomas, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Osak. I serve as a social media director and a community engagement manager for the Boston chapter. Now, for Ann Thomas, who is a dynamic, award-winning advocate for people with hearing loss and wears many hats in the hearing loss community. Among them is the HLAA brand ambassador, HLAA Northern California chapter coordinator, HLAA Diablo Valley chapter president, and a co-author of Getting the Hearing Loop Advocacy Guide and Toolkit notebook, and author of Effective Communication, the American with Disability Act, providing communication access for people with hearing loss. That sounds like she's really involved with a lot of the hard of hearing community and so much involved with the hearing loss association of Americans. For Anne, she began losing her hearing in the late 40s, and today she has two successful advanced bionic cochlear implants. She's a lover of technology and new things, that's what she's going to be learning tonight. She consciously pushes the boundaries of what is possible and tinkers with hearing assistive device. Her favorite assistive listening system is the hearing loop. She lives in Amarone, California with her husband. She graduated from the University of San Francisco with a Bachelor of Science in Organizational Behavior Development. She has owned a computer consulting business, Oracle, right?
No, the Mac Oracle.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
She has assisted international experience gained from living, traveling, and working abroad. On to the next slide. So I'll be managing this Zoom meeting tonight. If you have any questions, if you're really concerned of, if you're really shy of asking questions, please feel free to DM me, and I'll be happy to ask a question to Ann Thomas. And before Ann Thomas takes over, there's some ground rules I like to go with. As you notice, captions are enabled. If your captions are off, click below that says show captions, and then you turn your toggle on to turn on the captions. Of course, most of the time, meetings are recorded to be made available to our members via YouTube. please mute yourself during presentation, which is that's what you guys just did literally when you just hop on. So thank you very much. Please hold questions to the end of each topic. And for Q&A, at the bottom of the Zoom, there's a hand icon. Raise your hand if you have any questions. We can stop in the middle of the meeting, but usually at the end, we have a Q&A. So with that being said, Anne, thank you very much for coming in tonight, and the floor is yours.
Thanks. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and we can go ahead and get going. Can everybody see my screen? See the slides? Perfect. I'd like everybody to also know that Jonathan asked me to activate and leave on the captions that are available in PowerPoint so that people are aware that those exist, that they may choose to activate them for presentations that they give. And you're also able to compare them in this particular presentation between the PowerPoint captions and the Zoom captions. I have been in meetings before where there weren't captions provided, and I actually pulled up a blank PowerPoint screen and ran captions in the room for people to be able to benefit from that. Well, first of all, I'm really happy to be here today. As I've been watching people come into the waiting room, I've been seeing all my friends and colleagues, and it really touches me that you wanted to hear me today. This topic, know your rights, ask for what you need, is very, very dear and important to me. And the focus of this presentation, which I've given many times in different locations and it continues, was driven by the fact that I had to learn how to, first of all, know what I needed and then ask for it. And I had a terrible experience when I got my 2 cochlear implants, and I became an advocate at the hospital that I got my implants at. And so this is just going further. So how many people here, and you don't have to raise your hand, it's just to think about, think that hearing loss is a disability? A whole lot of people in our community really don't embrace the idea that this is a disability. And if it weren't a disability, there wouldn't be rights and benefits that would be able for us to receive. Some of those laws are their disability rights laws that are both federal and state. And I looked up some of your laws in Boston and in Massachusetts, and I hope that my information on what's available in your state is accurate. So the first thing that everybody's the most familiar with is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it's really not that old. It's only from 1990. It's not, like something that's been around forever. Oh, I'm showing my age, right? So to me, that seems like it's not that old, right? But I'm sure if you're 40, it's a different story. Preceding that were federal laws. There's Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act from 1973. Also Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And in Massachusetts, you have the General Laws, Chapter 151B, the Massachusetts Equal Rights Act, called MARA, and the Massachusetts Law Library has a wonderful website for you on disability rights. At the end of my presentation, I put together a couple of slides that have information just pretty much pertaining to Massachusetts and the Boston area, and I'll be happy to make those into documents for you that you could post on your website or distribute via email to all your members. Well, hello. Hearing loss is a disability. I'm assuming everybody who's attending this meeting today has hearing loss. How many of us really embrace it as a disability may be another thing. How many of us ask for communication access can be a whole nother thing. So the ADA is celebrating its 36th anniversary this year on July 26th, 2026. So it's nothing new that there are accommodations written into the law and also the standards for how the law is enacted. So the ADA is divided into sections, and those sections are called titles. Kind of a strange thing to call sections, but that's what they decided to call them. Title 1 is employment. Title 2 is state and local government. Title 3 is public accommodations. Title 4 is telecommunications. And then there's a miscellaneous category. Where? Everywhere. Doesn't mean that they need to provide you with an assistive listening system, but they need to provide communication access so that we can participate just like other people. So if you take a look at the icons who are on this slide, it gives you an idea of the vastness of all of the places that we're actually really not getting communication access. So it's part of our development of our advocacy muscle to reach out and continue to ask so that we get what we need. Many people wonder, what is communication access? So according to the ADA, the goal is to ensure that communication with people with disabilities is equal as effective as communication with people without disabilities. So I don't know how many of you at one time did not have hearing loss, and you could remember how easy it was to go anywhere and you just understood things. And with your hearing loss, that whole situation changed. And the law is here to ensure that we have things that were more closely related to what we remembered before we had hearing loss. Obviously, hearing loss is common. Those of us who are members of HLAA all know that. So the rule of thumb is that it's, and I want to say here that there's no definitive survey in our country for people with disabilities. The census doesn't have a question for us. So all of the information that we have in relationship to that is extrapolated information. At this time, the highest number that's being recorded is coming from Johns Hopkins, but I didn't use their figures. I used a more conservative amount, which is 1 in 5, which I say is 20%. Okay, and that would be 135,000 people in Boston and 885,000 people in the metropolitan area of Boston. It's a lot of people. It's not just 10. You know, we should have a really loud voice and people should be listening to us. Hearing loss is a spectrum disorder. So one size does not fit all. We have deaf people who identify as part of the deaf community, and it's considered like its own culture, like French, German, Chinese. That's why it has a capital D. We have late deafened adults, which I consider myself to be. We have people with severe hearing loss. We have people with mild to moderate hearing loss. So this is really a wide range. And then we know within each one of those categories, people don't process sound the same way. You can have two people with the exact same audiogram and they have the exact same hearing aid and they'd be programmed differently to benefit each one of those people. A huge myth that we all face is that everybody knows ASL. My experience has been when I ask for communication access, the first thing that anybody says to me is, "Oh, great, we'll get you an ASL interpreter." And the reality is that, and I'm not begrudging anyone who's part of the deaf community, that they need ASL and should have it. I just want to encourage raising awareness of the fact that those groups of people are much smaller than the whole population of the rest of us who self-identify as hard of hearing, having hearing loss. So it's estimated that people who self-identify as part of the deaf community may be as low as 1.5% of the total people who are part of the hard of hearing community. So, you know, it's really a funny thing, isn't it? So everybody knows about ASL, but nobody, hardly anybody knows about us. And these numbers are skewed. We have to do something about that. We had a little conversation while we were in the waiting room before everybody came in, and Brad was sharing an experience, and I said, "Oh, well, wait till you see my slide." So after I got my cochlear implants, I kept being in situations where my implants are so successful. I'm hearing better than I ever imagined in my whole life. It's beyond my wildest dreams. But I'm still a hard of hearing person. And I can never predict when I'm going to hear and when I'm not going to hear. And so I was in meetings, I was in things, and I was doing just fine. And I could see people sometimes wondering, well, what is this about her? You know, she doesn't seem to have a problem. Well, that's on my best day. And so I tried to think about a way to communicate this. How could I invent something that would make that easy to understand? And this is what I came up with. So people with hearing loss, we live uncertain lives. We never know when we're going to be able to understand and when we won't. And there's another part of this. Many of us only think about what we're doing on our best day. Someone says, "Well, how are you doing?" You may tell them about your best day experience, not your worst day. And if you wait until you are at an event, at the doctor's office, some place where you're going where you need to hear, and don't ask for the accommodation ahead of time, and you get there and you need it, it's too late to provide it. So I really want to impress on everybody, ask for the communication access that you need across the board. If it turns out that you don't need it for that event or that situation, be happy. Say hallelujah, but don't feel guilty because you asked, because you're just taking good care of yourself, and nobody else can do that but you. I was thinking about this earlier, and I've known and met thousands and thousands of people with hearing loss. Of all of the people that I have ever met with hearing loss, I think I've only met a handful of people who ever had their hearing healthcare professional really let them know that hearing aids were a helper and they worked in one-to-one quiet situations, but that they aren't enough, that you're going to need more under other situations. So what are some of those obstacles to speech comprehension? Distance from the sound source. How far away are you from the speaker? And when this says the sound source, sometimes people are confused. I was in a meeting the other day and somebody was talking about, oh, well, I don't understand this assistive listening system. They have a public address system here. And I said, oh, well, the effective range of hearing aids is only about 6 feet. You know, that's not very much. Put your arm out. They put their arm out. And I said, where do you think the loudspeakers are in this room? And the person I was talking to and I both went like this because they were in the ceiling. And, you know, we were sitting down, and in California, we have lots of rooms with high ceilings. And I said, well, you know, does that seem like it's further than 6 feet away to you? And they said, we both started laughing. He says, oh, I guess I understand now. So how far you are away from that sound source. Reverberation or echo. Some spaces just have bad acoustics. I know at this time some attention by some designers and the green movement is to improve acoustics in rooms, but it's happening very slowly. Competing background noise. If there's any other noise going on, you know, that's always a problem. Oh, and there's one other thing that's not on here, and it keeps coming and going, and that's face masks. So I originally had face masks on this slide during the pandemic. Then I took it off. And today, one of the highlights in the San Francisco paper was that there are there are 4 concurrent viruses that are happening at very high levels in the Bay Area, and they were recommending that people wear face masks again. So it's here to stay, and somebody wears a face mask and it's my worst day. And I'm assuming it's the same thing for everybody else here. A lot of people are really confused by what's required. What is the language of the ADA? What does it actually say? And I'd like to expand on the way that we use that term, the ADA, first. Many people don't realize that the ADA is actually divided into not titles and sections, but they're actually different components of it. There is one component that's actually the law. What does the law say about this? Usually, when we say the ADA, we're not referring really to the law. We're referring to the ADA standards. And the ADA standards are created by the Access Board, and that is the interpretation of the ADA and how you apply it in real life. So an example of that would be, at what height does signage need to be to indicate that there is some kind of accessibility there? And so the Access Board takes into consideration people in wheelchairs. I mean, they actually have a measurement. It needs to be 48 inches from the ground so somebody who's sitting in a wheelchair can see a sign. So what the language is of the ADA is they say that auxiliary aids and services are to be provided. So that's this broad terminology to apply to everything, which could be captions, could be writing on a whiteboard, could be writing with paper and pencil. It could be using a pocket talker or personal amplifier, could be using an FM. And so it's up to each one of us to become familiar with all of the technologies, because we're the person who needs to request what works for us. So somebody can offer you something, and if that doesn't work for you, then they didn't satisfy the law. So you need to know what that is. So what is actually required? Communication with people with hearing disabilities is equally as effective as communication without disabilities. So what are the keys to effective communication? How do you determine, does it work? Is it working? So the first one is the nature of the communication. So obviously, if you walk into some place and you want to know where the restroom is, somebody could very easily write down on a piece of paper down the hall to the left. That would be considered effective communication because it wasn't a complex query. Another piece, how long is it? See, writing that down the hall to the right, the length was short. So that would be considered effective communication. The complexity and context of the communication. So obviously, if you're having a visit with your physician and they're telling you that you have cancer, that's a very complex communication. And all filled with all kinds of details and all kinds of emotion and everything else. So writing things down on a piece of paper doesn't cut the mustard. And a person's normal method of communication. So obviously here, this would be very easy. If someone uses ASL, then they would need to be provided with American Sign Language. If someone were, and there's a concurrent syndrome, that you become deaf and you become blind. And then there's another kind of translation that's, the first time I saw this, I was so just awestruck, as they say in Great Britain, gobsmacked, right? Someone was holding out their hand like this, and someone was making symbols and signs in the palm of their hand to communicate. Just amazing. So if it's a small, not complex communication, you think about, how is it easily accomplished? How could you communicate things like that? And this happens to be, I believe, the Massachusetts Commission for the Deaf made this wonderful info card during the pandemic, and it really sparked a lot of ability to be able to communicate like this, because you can point. It's really simple. Somebody talks to you, they can point at the question, you can point at the answer. That could be an easily accomplished communication. Then another level would be a whiteboard. Every information counter in America should have a whiteboard. You could use paper and pen or pencil. I want to let everybody know here, just to be prepared though, when you tell people about paper, could you please write that down for me? I don't know what happens to people about that. There's some kind of huge disconnect between thinking about what you would say to write it down and have somebody read it. I've asked that question before, sometimes 10 and 20 times, and people don't quite understand what I'm asking. When I got my cochlear implant, the day that they turned my implant on, I went by myself. My husband didn't have to spend 4 hours there with me while they set everything up. And I left and I went to the parking garage. Well, it turned out that the machine to pay at the parking garage and the arm at the parking garage were broken. So when I went to pay for what I owed for parking, the guy's talking to me and I didn't understand anything he was saying. And so I'm saying to him, "Oh, I'm hard of hearing. I can't understand what you're telling me. Can you please write it down on a piece of paper so I can read it?" I'm telling you, I said this at least 10 times. And finally, the person who was working there with him got it. They wrote it down and held up the sign to me and said, "The gate's broken." So don't be and don't be impatient. Don't be angry. It is what it is. This person wasn't trying to do something bad. They just didn't get it. But I'm just hoping to prepare you in case that happens for you. And the infographics is here. So what might auxiliary aids and services be considered? So we're all familiar with personal amplifiers. They can be wired or wireless. So obviously a pocket talker, which is the gold standard for personal amplifiers, is wired. So the microphone is connected to the device, or you can put an extension cord on the pocket talker so that you could extend the range for the microphone so a person could sit further away from you. Another personal amplifier could be an FM system that would have a transmitter and a receiver. They're sold as a unit. You get one of each, and that would be wireless because the person who had the transmitter could be a distance away from you without any cords. There could be assistive listening systems. There could be captions. There can be CART, which is a kind of captions, which is the gold standard, and it's a live person who transcribes the meeting, which is different than what we have today. So today we happen to have two choices. We have the Zoom captions. We're able to see how well the ASR captions for Zoom are progressing, and also for PowerPoint, and they're doing really well. So AI is driving the improvement in all of this, and it's going to affect all of our lives exponentially. And then we have interpreting, and there are multiple kinds of interpreting. So all of these things would be considered auxiliary aids and services. So here's a photograph of a personal amplifier. So on the left, we see a pocket talker, and on top of that is a neck loop. And you can see the plug for the neck loop is pointing down, meaning it would go into the audio port of the pocket talker. This particular pocket talker is the 2.0, which is my favorite. It's stereo, and it also has a built-in T-coil. So if somebody had this and they didn't have a telecoil in their device and they like to be double sure to make sure that they were always covered and kept one in their car or their back or pack or something like that, that they could connect the T-coil and use the headphones, whatever they wanted. On the right is a personal FM system, and it has the same kind of accessories: headphones, earbuds, earplugs, and neck loops. Our favorite systems, assistive listening systems. Our favorite above all is a hearing loop, And the reason we all like it is because if we have a telecoil, we don't need to do anything. We just walk in and activate the telecoil, adjust the balance between the outside sounds and the telecoil to see what we get the best sound with, and we don't need to do anything else. There's also an FM system, and in an FM system, everyone needs a connector and a receiver. And it took me a long time to understand FM. FM is just another word for a radio frequency. You know, we have AM and FM radio, and there's a certain frequency that's reserved for assistive listening systems. There's an infrared system, and everyone needs a receiver and a connector for an infrared system. The East Bay chapter, which is actually in Oakland, has just moved to a new meeting space in Kaiser Permanente Hospital. And the space where they're meeting has an infrared system. And I had not used an infrared in a really long time. And that system, even though I had to use a neck loop and use a receiver, was very clear. There are two other systems that you may hear about. One of them is audio over Wi-Fi, and there have been mixed reviews from people with hearing loss who've used it. Some people have reported that they have latency, which means that there's a delay in the sound, and what usually happens is it's a delay that happens between the loudspeakers in the room and how quickly the Wi-Fi comes to your device. In the upgrade of 2010 to the ADA standards, they included language for the first time that required assistive listening systems to be hearing aid compatible. And what that meant was that all of the systems have to provide neck loops so that people who have telecoil-enabled devices for FM and infrared could directly connect to the receiver. Before that, that was not written into the law, so that was a really big win for us. Captions. All of us love them. All of us need them. Now, if we could just get the ones on TV, live TV for the news, to be up to snuff and accurate, all of our lives would be better. So the gold standard is called Communication Access Real-Time Translation, and that's really a mouthful, you know. So we all call it CART, and it can be in person or remote. So in the state of California, we have a telephone access program, and during the pandemic, they expanded the program that any event that is 3 or more people, you can request remote CART for. And it doesn't cost you anything. So we're really, the Diablo Valley chapter is very fortunate to have that because we don't have to pay for CART for our meetings any longer. There are also, where the CC icon is, you have closed and open captions. And one is they're permanently embedded on the screen. And the other one is that you can turn them on and off. And then we have automatic speech recognition. When automatic speech recognition first started, a lot of us were really grumbling because it wasn't really that accurate. So Facebook was the first thing that I'm aware of that had some ASR captions. And I mean, every other word was like, you're trying to figure out what it could be. Today, on both of the ASRs that we have today, I haven't seen one mistake. Now, granted, most people say that I've gotten feedback from people that I articulate very clearly. I have people say to me, I can understand you. Why doesn't everybody talk like you do? And I don't have the answer for that. I'm just expanding that so that if someone was having more difficulty with the ASR captions, they might want to spend a little bit of time seeing if there was some way that they could articulate a little better. So there are two pictures on this slide. The picture on the left is at a HLAA convention, and they had CART in the room, and the CART is running on a separate screen with stream text. Today, they don't do it like that. They run the CART captions right on the slides. The image on the right is an image of Ava, which was one of the first speech-to-text apps. And it's unique in that to the best of my knowledge, AVA is the only one of the ASR apps that allows you to have more than one person connected as a unique entity to the app. And what that means is you can use AVA over distance. I could have AVA on my phone in California and communicate with any of you anywhere in the United States. All you would do would be, I would send you an invitation and you would connect to my AVA session. You could send me an invitation. And this is the only one that does that. Now, during the pandemic, it was especially valuable because we needed to maintain a 6-foot distance. And so the speech to text apps that we use with our smartphones usually are more accurate the closer you are to the microphone on the device. And usually, here's your smartphone, you want it close. Something I'd like to remind people of as they're doing that. Some you can rotate, some you can't. AVA, you can rotate. So the speakers on my cell phone are on the bottom. So when you're holding your cell phone, the tendency is to put your hand over the speakers. So if you do that, you're going to have, not as clear a communication. Well, AVA is made so you can rotate it. So the speakers would then be up. You can hold your phone like normal. And during the pandemic, this was really valuable for me. In the grocery store, I would approach the checkout counter and I would tell the checker that I had hearing loss and I couldn't understand them because of the face mask. Now, everybody in my Safeway knows I have hearing loss, right? I've been going there for 40 years. But then I would say, and I have a very cool thing. It's a speech to text app. I would have it turned on and running. I would point it, show it to them. Everybody was so excited because they didn't know what that was. And to see that happen, and I said, so that's what I'm going to be using. That's why I'm reaching my hand out like this. And so that way that resolved all of the issue of, if somebody puts something in your face and doesn't say anything to you, it really makes you, it takes you back a little. And that solved all that problem. I didn't have any problems about that. This image here was taken at the 2010 HLAA Walk for Hearing in San Francisco. And I took the photograph. And for me, it's always been just exquisitely beautiful. And so I like to use it as often as possible. And we had an ASL interpreter at our walk, and this man was doing his ASL, and look at how graceful and beautiful his hands are. So the type of translation that we're the most familiar with probably is American Sign Language. In case you don't know, sign language is specific to countries. So I was thinking there was a universal sign language, but there's not. There's American Sign Language, there's British Sign Language, there are all kinds of sign languages. And sign language was actually invented in France. There's tactile interpreting, which I was talking about when I was talking about the person who was blind and also deaf, where they were making symbols in the palm of the hand. There's oral interpreting, and the people who are oral interpreters are specifically trained in how to articulate so that a person who is hard of hearing could understand better. So in a hospital setting, you might think, oh, I think I just want an oral interpreter. And so then a person who was trained like that would be there to provide assistance for you. And foreign languages are also considered under translation. Because of my advocacy work in hospitals, I've learned something that it's really puzzling to me, but it is what it is. Most of the accommodations for people with hearing loss are in the area of translation. So it never dawned on me to contact ASL Translation if they have something on their website about that to ask for the accommodation that I would need for hearing loss. But in lots of hospital situations, that's where they have slotted that function. So I just want to mention that to people in case they run into a situation like I did. So the next pages are information I put together for you for New England and Massachusetts. And I'm happy to print those in a 1-page or 2-page document so that you can distribute them. Everybody in this room, I think, knows that we absolutely need a change. Not even probably a quarter of the places that are required by law to provide accommodations to us are doing that. So if we don't ask for what we need, there is not a chance in hell that somebody's going to give it to us out of the goodness of their heart. So it's a piece that for some people can be really hard. And I just kind of liken it to, well, it's just the advocacy muscle. Like if you go to the gym, if you're doing some kind of physical activity and you're developing your muscles, over time, they get bigger, they get better. And the same thing is true in your advocacy work. You get more self-confident, you get more comfortable. So I have a perspective that I think that sometimes the things that make us the most uncomfortable are the things that we need to work on. So I want you all to know that if it's hard for you and you're worried about what people think about you, that it does get better over time, and to just try it. Awareness, which we all know we need it, plus courage, plus action can equal change. And I dream of a place, and I'm not excluding Hawaii. I just couldn't find it. I just have never been able to find a good image of Hawaii that fits with the buildings. So Hawaii too, but from Los Angeles to New York, that we're all working toward creating hearing-friendly communities so that we can all function the best we can and live great and wonderful lives. I can never close this presentation without making a comment about what it took to get the ADA passed. The people with mobility issues that worked on that, they had to crawl. See this little woman in this picture here with the helmet on? She's 12 years old. She had to crawl on her hands and knees up the steps of the Capitol in Washington to shame our legislators to finally pass the ADA. So we all owe them a huge debt of gratitude. And we need to exercise our advocacy muscle so that we get what we need. Now the floor is open to questions, and I'm going to go ahead and take my slide down so that I can see everybody.
Thank you very much, Ann. That was a wonderful presentation. And as you can see a couple of times in the chat room, that a lot of people have shared their favorite closed caption app. A lot of people have said about what you mentioned about Ava, and someone said captions for a telephone call and so forth and everything. And I did mention it earlier that the ADA was passed on July 26, 1990. So it's going to be, so this coming July is going to be 36 years since that bill was passed. And I know that has been a huge part of our lives, and how much we try to keep sending the message to make sure that people are aware of the ADA. But I know that there are times that we have a difficult time getting through it because there are some gray areas that was what has to be said. So I know that I had a great conversation with Ann a couple of months ago, asking for her business advice, and then I also told her a little bit about my experience that happened 4 years ago. That I know that, and I know that many of you that I am familiar have dealt with this situation, and we try to do everything we can to keep it positive. So this meeting was so important to me to be part of this and able have a wonderful person like Ann Thomas to educate us. And while I see that Janine has her hand raised, so Janine, the floor is yours.
Yeah, but Janine, before you start talking, somebody asked, there was a pop-up that asked if we could turn off transcription, and I said I clicked no. I don't know whether that person was referring to the fact that we had captions that were PowerPoint captions and we had Zoom captions, but we all need them. So no, I'm sorry, we can't turn them off. Go ahead, Janine.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's good to see everybody. Hi to my friends. The back on our cell phone for speech to text is a super game changer, and I've been happy to educate a lot of people about them. You'd be surprised how so many people with hearing loss don't know about them. But I want to share a situation with Anne about what happened to me and how I resolved it. I use my speech to text app in the doctor's office. And as you know, it's a temporary transcription, it's not a recording, and it stays on the phone just 2 days or whatever. They were basically saying I can't do that. I'm violating the HIPAA laws. So I shut them up with two things. I said, number one, I have a note here from my doctor saying that I have hearing loss and I need to use this. Number two, I did research and I said the ADA trumps over the HIPAA laws. The HIPAA laws have to do with how medical providers share their information about patients without your consent. It does not mean that it's an invasion of privacy if you're having a conversation with your doctor or any medical provider. Obviously, if you're using speech to text app, it's okay with you and it's enabling your communication. So I say to them, I have that right to accessibility and understanding about it. But that's something some people, pharmacies, hospitals, doctors will try to tell you you're violating HIPAA by using a speech to text app.
Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up, Janine. It's absolutely not true. What probably needs to happen about that, though, is because a lot of people don't understand that, is that there needs to be a major lawsuit. That somebody is willing to take the time and effort to bring that forward, and then it'll be out in the public for everybody to see. Built into HIPAA is providing accessibility for people with disabilities. They provide ASL, so they can provide whatever we need to. Thanks. I was running through the questions, and I saw some people talking about Eno caption and speech to text. I'd like to make a little bit of a differentiation here. And there are places where they cross over. So originally, there was not speech to text on your phone that you could use on your phone that was active for everything. And so the captioning phones got expanded to be able to allow for companies like Eno Caption, Clear Caption Mobile, Caption Call Mobile to have captions with their services for cell phones. Those services that are approved to be used for telephone conversations like that, they get paid. It's funded by a tax that's everybody's taxed on their phone bills across the country. And the companies who are providing that service gets funding from that, so it's free to everybody. That's different than a plain speech to text app. A speech to text app is basically just for a conversation, not a telephone conversation. And so the place where I'm just wanting to mention that it overlaps, so see, it gets a little confusing now because Apple's live caption, it's a floating screen on your phone. And so it'll caption anything that is happening. So it would caption a telephone call. But I actually like the fact that Caption and some of the other ones, you can caption both sides of the conversation. And so with that, the piece that happens is I'm talking to somebody and I have answered thinking that it's I answered the right thing, and their response, I'm all of a sudden going, oh, their response isn't what I anticipated it should be. So then I'm thinking, well, gee, I wonder if I misunderstood what they said. So I can scroll back and see what I actually answered, and I can see what they asked again, make a correction there, and then move forward. So without being able to see those two sides of the conversation, you can't quite do that. So the speech to text apps are, the first one was Google Live Transcribe, and it was a game changer, only for Android. Oh, excuse me. Ava was first, then Live Transcribe. Some people use Otter, some people, but it doesn't work the same. Then Apple was kind of late to the game, and they have live captions. There are several, a ton of other companies that also have them. And so people pick what they like. I hope that answered that question in there. There's somebody says naggish, right? So
Yeah, there's so many
yeah,
apps out there, so many of them. Basically there's now another one coming, the Captify classes or those closed caption classes. And I'm so glad that Janine brought it up about this because I had a public speaking the other day about this main topic, and somebody walked into the room with the closed caption classes, and they could tell what it was, and this person was able to try to convince this individual to say, "No, I'm not taking pictures or I'm not recording. I'm using it as my closed caption and able to communicate with you and so forth, and because of the HIPAA law, et cetera, et cetera." But it's just one of those things where people are so secured about their information. But the thing is that when you enter into healthcare settings, does it have to be up to doctors and nurses to make sure that the HIPAA law is secured, not us?
yeah. So Jonathan, it's not the doctors and nurses. So all major facilities,
Yeah,
they're not the ones setting the policy. They're not the one doing that. So you need to go past your physician. You need to go past the people, and you need to go to patient relations, patient services, to start filing your complaints. Start asking for what you need and filing your complaints.
yeah. There's so many things. ADA is such an amazing tool to use, but there's just a lot of things that needs to be educated, and just to make sure that, like, is this okay? You're not gonna kick me out, or what is it? Like, I'm sure that everybody in this room here have requested accommodations. I know for one, I did a long time ago, working in this major airline, and I was there for 10 months. And but before I even went on to the next position, I requested a radio, a Bluetooth radio, which will be compatible to my hearing aid. Then when they honor it, I knew right off the bat that radio was not compatible. It was the same radio as the original one that I had. And then from that point on, they just went through all the process. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the key term called unpaid medical leave of absence, which is a loophole that many companies have used. And I have shared a lot of information with Ann Thomas, and she's been nothing but really helpful during my time, and to see if how we can break the barriers making sure that we communicate in the right way without even removing the individual off the workforce and so forth and everything. So, but yeah, this has been amazing experience to learn from this. Does anybody else have any questions or any combinations that you have shared in the past or anything that you want to ask Ann Thomas for this?
I see James Jake West, who kind of has his hand up. Are you trying to get our attention?
Yeah.
Yes, I have
Yeah. So Jim, are you called? Oh, Jake, there it is. So Jake, before we move forward, I want to point out to you how you would normally get our attention so that we don't have to do this. In the menu bar at the bottom of your screen, you'll see an icon that says raise hand. When you click on that, it automatically puts a hand on your thumbnail for the hosts and co-hosts, and also in the participants list, it's there. So you don't have to worry about somebody getting called on ahead of you. They're placed in order by the people who raise their hand. So go ahead.
Okay, I think I forgot my question. No, actually, my screen has the reaction heart, and then you have it's a sub level. The raise hand is a sub. It's not apparent. So
when was the last time you updated your Zoom? It's been separate for a really long time. And if yours isn't separate, you also can go. So Zoom has two components that people may not be aware of. There are settings that are available in the online portal. It's zoom.us. And everybody can have an account. They have free accounts. And when you go in there, there are all these other additional settings that you can control what you see on your Zoom. And those are separate from the ones that are only available to you in a meeting. So go ahead and say, look at that later or contact me and I'll walk you through it on a Zoom.
Okay. I had a quick question. I noticed that some organizations publish fully ADA compliant. And by that, and they actually believe themselves to be so. But I found I went to a fully ADA compliant and they sort of handed me a loop and a receiver and, a FM setup. But it was like I didn't even know how to use it. They didn't know how to use it. And the neck loop was too long and it would have been very hard to kind of jiggle it around to get it. So what do people think? I mean, I thought they would be fully, I'd be accommodated, but what's your sense of that?
So, can you give us an idea? Was this a public accommodation?
Yes.
Okay. So if it's state and local government, they on their website, they have that to CYA themselves because they're required by law to have that in writing. So that's why they have that. Now, whether they have what it takes to back it up is another story. I have a question on the neck loop. Was it one like this? It was an FM?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. This slides.
Yeah.
So that's how you adjust the length. This is a slide button. So if you get that next time, that's how that is. And actually, it wouldn't really make any difference how long it is. You just have to make sure that it hangs straight down and that you're not doing this, because as soon as you do this, you're interfering with this being the loop for your telecoil. So you want to make sure that if you use a neck loop, that it hangs straight down and you don't try and hold it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I went to Mass Eye just yesterday for my annual hearing test, and when I went in, I noticed even the audiology department is not accessible really.
No, it's a bunch of BS. You need to complain to the hospital, patient services. You go to the audiology clinic, you go to the CI clinic, and they don't provide accommodations for people with hearing loss. Why would you think that somebody who didn't do that could give you good service if you went to them for a surgery or for help? I
So
filed a complaint with patient services at UCSF. And now there's a big sign. Now they have things.
What about the feeling of retribution or something that you will somehow be labeled a difficult patient or get
Who
less than?
cares? What are you worried about what people think about you for?
Yeah.
You know, I totally get it, what you're saying, James. You know, just the other day, I had this little broadcast talking about um, people are so worried to request a combination or worry about filling out an application of what their disability status because they're so concerned about not getting a fair shot. So I do get what you're coming from. But you know what? Do it.
They're violating the law. Now, I
Yeah.
know at this point in our political scene, it's kind of moot about this, but it still is the law. So, Sandy Speckman, I see you have your hand up. Hi.
Hi, Ann. I have a question about entertainment. I request captioning, they don't do it. They give me an assistive listening device. This is the Performing Arts Center where I live. And I need more than just the assistive listening device because I don't get the songs. I don't get the jokes. I need the captioning, but they don't provide it. And they say they're ADA accessible.
Well, they can say whatever they want. You need to file a lawsuit. You need to file a complaint with the Access Board, and you just need to know that the Access Board doesn't take all the complaints. They review complaints and they decide what they want to take. So you need the easiest way to do that is to find a disability attorney and file a lawsuit, and there's no charge to you because the fees for the attorney's fees come out of any settlement. But if we don't file lawsuits in situations like this, they just shine you on. Sandy, that's what's happening is they're shining you on and saying whatever they want to say, and it's not accessible. Right? I'm here with you.
We are.
Yeah.
We're all here with you, and I know that a lot of times that you will see websites that will say ADA compliance or where we're ADA, but when you go to the certain place, they're not really up to your standard. Like, what do you want it to be? So, yeah, we totally get what you're coming from. I think Carrie had her hand up earlier. Carrie, do you have a question? I don't think Carrie. Carrie, do you have a question for Ann? You had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on James's point about Mass Pioneer. I also have had a couple of not fabulous experiences at that institution, which is mind-blowing because, obviously eye and ear, that's their specialty. But, I chalk it up to most of the people I encounter are full hearing people and they just don't get it. So I've learned to, let them know in advance, as Ann was suggesting, that I'm coming in and what my needs are. I usually request captioning. And, I haven't yet had an experience when I've asked that I've been disappointed, but it's always in the back of my mind that might happen. So James, I feel with you.
Yeah. So I have a question. Why don't you create a survey, a short survey, and ask how many people use Mass Eye and Ear, and ask how many people ask for accommodations, what accommodations they get, how did they get the accommodations, and then figure out what the next steps would be.
That
It
sounds
would
like
be
a
a
good
very
idea.
good thing.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
I think
Hi,
it's a great
Karen, I
idea.
see your hand is up.
Yes, I'm new to this. I'm just got hearing aids and what does that mean to,
Welcome.
yeah, what does that mean to request captioning, like when you go to a doctor's appointment? I don't understand what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Like how would you get that?
Okay. Thank you very much for asking your question and sharing your level of experience. It's really helpful and wonderful for everybody. Today, because we have so many things that have automatic speech recognition captions, it's really easy for them to provide captions. They could hand you an iPad, and it's their responsibility to provide it. In the past, if you would ask that, and you could still ask for this and they'd be required to provide it, they would do it with a laptop. So they would have a cart provider providing. So the cart provider would be listening to the conversation with the microphone and the laptop, and they would remotely or maybe in person be typing the captions, which is the text. So captions are text of what's being said on the screen so you could read it. Does that make sense? So have you ever attended an event that had a live cart reporter in the meeting?
No.
Oh, okay. So the person who is providing the captions is called a cart reporter. And what the equipment that they have is very similar to a court reporter. It's a little device like this. They type every single thing that's being said in the room. And their machine is connected to a projector. And so in a room where captions are being provided, and actually you could see it like on my slide. Let me go back and see if I can find that slide really quickly. So in a place where they're providing captions, they're projected on a screen. See this picture right here where there's the woman on the stage and there's a huge screen there and you see all the text on it?
Yes.
So that was in a meeting. And every single thing that was said by people through the microphone was captured via text so that everybody who was hard of hearing in the room could read it. If you see the cell phone image here in that picture, that's text that's happening on your cell phone.
So if you didn't want to request that they give you an iPad, you could get an app on your phone that would transcribe what they're saying into text for you.
Correct. Now, this piece that I just would like to share with you, and we all have times where we're stronger than other times. And by law, they are required to provide it for you, or we pick our battles. Now, I'm not saying I always make them provide it. I'm not saying I don't provide my own sometimes. But I'd like to encourage you to go through the exercise of asking them to raise awareness. Do you have an iPhone or do you have an Android?
iPhone.
If you go into the settings on the iPhone and go to accessibility, they have accessibility features that are at least 10 different items. One of them is hearing, and the second from the last thing on that list is called live caption.
Oh, I see it.
And if you turn that on, then what happens is you get a little floating window, and you can have the window be open or closed. You can read it like a little bar, or you can read it in full screen. And you can also adjust how big the text is or how small the text is. And I think the colors too.
Wow. So that's when you're on the phone also?
Well, so I don't use that when I'm on the phone. I use a different app. It's called INNO Caption, CAPTION. That's what I use. You could also use Clear and Clear Caption and Caption Call Mobile. I happen to prefer, Caption. It's a choice. We all get to pick. Oh, thank you, Janine. Janine just pointed out a device that many of us may not be familiar with. We don't see it very often. It's called an Ubi Duo. And my major hospital has Ubi Duos, but nobody knows how to use them. And the first time I ever used an Ubi Duo was in an HLAA convention on the tech floor. And what it is, it's a system that has, oh, how can I, kind of like if they were small laptops, but they're not laptops. It's a keyboard and a little screen. And you have one side and the other person has the other side. And I was happening to communicate with someone who was deaf and used ASL. And so I didn't know ASL, so they typed what they wanted me to know, and I couldn't understand ASL, so I read what they were asking me, and then they couldn't hear either, so I typed back what the answer was, and we communicated back and forth like that. Thanks, Janine.
Thank you, Janine. That was a very good one. I'm actually typing it right now, and I'm gonna take pictures of that to see to educate myself about this device. So it looks like we got like about 5 minutes left before we end this meeting. So before I go back to my PowerPoint presentation, does anybody have any questions or anything you want to ask? Yeah, you guys have information and Thomas' email. So if you guys have any questions or anything, you know where to reach her. So I would like to share some upcoming events. For one, well, we got this Massachusetts Commissioner Devin Hart of hearing coming up April 30th, next week. And there's another one on May 2nd, which is a Saturday. April 30th, as many of you don't know, that I'm part of the SAC, which is a statewide advisory council for the Massachusetts Commission for Devin Hart of hearing. So I'm going to be there. And there's a QR code, or you could go on their website to register for you to come. It's open to the public. It's going to be at the Massachusetts State House. So all that is there. And we have this upcoming next month on May 19th. If you guys want to learn more about ERICAS and Hearing Loop with Wayne Winman on May 19th at 6:30. So all the information is in our social media, in our bio for you to register, and as well in our website. Who loves baseball? We got this Devin Hart of Hearing Awareness Game Night. For the past 4 years, the HLAA Boston chapter has been collaborating with the Wood Sox. And it's going to be on May 22nd on a Friday at Pollard Park at 6:05. There's the QR code. Again, our information is in the website and in our social media. If you guys want to purchase tickets and come for a wonderful game and show the support of the Devin Hart of Hearing community. Oh, who is coming to Kentucky? To Kentucky. I know I am. I'm going to be there. So again, there's a QR code. All the information that you can find at the HLAA national website to register to attend to the meeting. And I've been going there for the past 3.5 years. It's always a great time to get together with the Devin Hart of Hearing community. Kind of like tonight, we're always sharing one another. We're always communicating. We're always collaborating one another. So we really hope to see you guys there. And that's going to be on June 9th to the 12th, I believe. And then,
Jonathan, you might want to, I know that there are a lot of leaders here today. You might want to just mention to leaders that there is a leaders meeting that happens the day before the convention. So that will happen on Wednesday.
Wednesday, June 8th, right?
I think it's, I can look real quick. I think it's June 9th. Hang on one sec. Keep going and I'll just tell you when I get there.
Okay. And then, of course, many of you know how much involvement the HLAA Boston chapter has been with. So, with that being said, I just want to do a quick update on the latest movement regarding the hearing aid insurance legislator at the state house. As you know, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a SAC member. So the original bill was H3946, and it was officially replaced with a new draft now entitled H4959 after the Joint Committee on the Finance Service reviewed and issued an update version. This is a normal part. When the committee makes a revision, strengthen language, or restructure a bill, it refines under the new number. So that bill keeps its core, expanding hearing aid insurance coverage, but also includes clear definition, updated coverage requirements, and refined language to help them move forward. But as a recent update, it's been reported favorably and now is in the Joint Committee of the Healthcare Finance while we're still waiting the next step. So there's a QR code. It's on the HLAA national website. So if you guys want to support, please go there, register. We need as many signatures as possible as we can to get that bill passed. And we thank you for your support on that. And then at the end, how to get in touch with us? Here's our information. We're all on social media through YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and then there's our email, HLAA Boston chapter. HLAA Boston at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, and we would love to connect and collaborate. And I think with that being said, I think that's about to be it. I'm gonna read a little bit in the chat room. Looks like we're all set. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I want to say thank you to Ann Thomas for her wonderful presentation and joining us. And I am looking forward to seeing all of you in Kentucky. And Ann Thomas, thank you so much for your time. Bye, everyone.